Welcome to Tales from the Dark Side, hosted by me, best-selling author Conrad Jones. Tonight, the door creaks open, the lights grow dim, and you are invited into the shadows. Beyond this point lie disturbing events, twisted mysteries, and tales soaked in horror, some true, some even truer. Stories that crawl beneath your skin, whisper in the dark, and leave you questioning just how fragile your grip on reality really is. So grab yourself a brew, lock the doors and listen carefully, because once the darkness descends, it may never leave. This is Tales from the Dark Side, and the nightmares are only just beginning. Prologue. The window at 44 Penny Lane, Liverpool. David Simmons stood before the weather-beaten front door of 44 Penny Lane, Liverpool, made famous by the Beatles in 1967. Thousands of tourists visit the unassuming street every year and have no inkling of the paranormal history of number 44. The shop unit occupied the ground floor with living accommodation above. Part of a row of retail outlets, its appearance belies the evil within. Its history loomed over the quiet street like a dark stain, its blackened brickwork slick with rain and age. Locals called it the most haunted house in the city. Its reputation stretched back centuries. It's documented that from the 1800s, in the days of horse-drawn deliveries, the animals would behave erratically when they passed the property at number 44. Horses refused to walk past it after sunset, leaving the delivery men to carry their goods to the shops. By the time David reached number 44, the rain had intensified into something like tiny shards of ice stinging his cheeks. It didn't fall vertically, it tested gravity, angling itself against the glass of the shop, as if it meant to smash its way in. Across the road a taxi idled, wipers pacing like a metronome. The driver was ensconced by his phone. Dave tucked his collar higher and looked up at the top window where the young blonde girl has often appeared. There were numerous reported sightings of her sitting crying in the window dating back decades. Some reports said she waved. He stared at the glass which reflected the street lights, the darkness behind like ink, black liquid. A crack ran from the top to the bottom. He stared, wishing for her to appear, but there was nothing. He had read the books about this place, looked once, seen nothing, but looked thrice, and she was there, but not tonight. Reports of the young girl were consistent. She was small, maybe 8, maybe 9, sometimes waving. Others saw her crying. Her blonde hair was flat against the skull as if water had just left him. A pale dress the colour of candle wax. Sometimes her hands were at her sides, not waving, not pleading, just there, staring back with those eyes. Pale blue yet luminous, her pupils jet black. A taxi drove past and he saw a shimmer. Was it her? He stared, wanting to see her, wanting to be transfixed, proved wrong. For a moment it held him to the spot, the human version of a pin stuck through a butterfly. Look, see, study, keep. But it was a trick of the light. Movement caught his attention and he brought the camera to his eye. The lens clicked. Was it his hands shivering or the wind? The autofocus hunted her. When it snapped, he blinked. Not curiosity, a blink like a muscle twitch when a surgeon tests a nerve, triggered involuntarily. Dave took the first shot, then another. His breath fogged the rear screen. He hated that the heart rate monitor on his watch had learned to spike before his body admitted anything was wrong. He hated that his hands still went cold, the way they had in the hospital when the consultant had said, "I thought we had more time." It was said with such polished certainty that David wanted to tear his throat out just to stop the monotone smoothness of his voice. What he meant was, "I thought you had more time. There is no we in cancer." He knew the clock was ticking, but there was nothing he could do about it. So until it stopped, he would carry on doing what he loved, chasing shadows. When he checked the camera images, they were perfect shots of the window, but there was no sign of the little blonde girl in his photographs. He shook his head and sighed. Chasing the dead was challenging, impossible even. In the last 2 decades, over 70 ghost hunting series have been made for television and not a single shred of evidence discovered. What did that say? During thousands of hours of camera footage, not one ghostly image had been captured. Not one. Though plenty of unexplained encounters have been told 1,000,000 times, there was still no actual proof of the afterlife. He had made a living from disproving it all, that any of it existed, and he'd written many books on the subject, so the frustration was worth every penny. He took out the keys to number 44 Penny Lane, which he had collected from the unlucky estate agent who was tasked with selling one of the most haunted properties in the country, and he crossed the road. When he had picked up the keys, the agent looked sheepish, as if to say, "Don't go in there, mate." But Dave let him off the hook. "I know the history of the building, don't worry." "You clearly don't know enough, or you wouldn't be going into there. None of my staff will go near the place," the estate agent said. "You'll have to go unaccompanied, I'm afraid." "I'll be fine," Dave said, "but thank you for your concern." "There's a £50 refundable deposit for the keys," the estate agent shrugged. "Some people just don't bring them back, and we have to change the locks." "Okay, no problem," Dave said. "Are you actually interested in buying the property, or are you another paranormal investigator?" "Both," Dave said with a smile. "I'm thinking of running haunted house visits. Could be lucrative." "If I had £1 for every time I've heard that, I wouldn't need to work here anymore," the agent sighed. "People change their minds about that place very quickly. I've sold it 3 times in 12 months, and they all fell through." "What, they all pulled out?" Dave asked. "No, they didn't pull out. There were 2 strokes and a heart attack," the agent sighed. "The place is cursed, which makes it a pain in the arse. It was broken into 4 times last month." He shrugged. "It's clearly empty. There's nothing of value in the building, so what type of nutcase breaks in and why?" "Morbid curiosity," Dave said, smiling. "And curiosity killed the cat." Dave was determined to visit the property despite the warnings. He felt a shiver as he slid the key into the lock and twisted it. He grabbed the handle. He shoved, but it didn't budge, as if someone was holding it closed on the other side. He tried again, and the door gave on the second push. A smell met him. Damp, old magazines, a sickly sweetness like the inside of a milk bottle when the liquid was soured. Decomposition and mould, rot and decay, and other completely unwholesome odours. The iron latch groaned as Dave pushed the door open with his shoulder, and a blast of icy air met him immediately. It wasn't the ordinary chill of an abandoned building. This cold felt alive and unwelcoming, as if his arrival had awoken him. It seeped through his coat, crawled beneath his skin and settled deep into his bones. The smell of damp rot became stronger, filled his nostrils, wet plaster, mouldering wood, and something older, something ancient, something sour and decayed that had no obvious source. The front door slammed shut behind him and Dave flinched and switched on his torch. The hallway stretched ahead in darkness. Water stains ran down the walls like dirty tears. Somewhere in the house the floorboard creaked. Then another, then another. Footsteps. Maybe another break-in? The estate agent had said there'd been many. "Hello?" Dave called. "Hello?" Nothing. "Hello, if you've broken in, can you please fuck off while I have a look around?" The silence that followed seemed unnaturally heavy. His torch beam swept across peeling wallpaper and the staircase rising into the shadows above. The wooden banister was coated with dust, and the darkness beyond the first landing looked untouched by the light. To his left was the entrance to the shop. It was documented that it had been occupied by a printer in the 1970s, but now it was just a shell, stripped of brickwork and bare floorboards. The printers suffered an extended period of paranormal activity. Vibrating floorboards would bang and make so much noise at night that the neighbours made formal complaints to the council and the police. The racket was always during the night, when the business was closed and empty and all the staff were safe at home in bed. The catalogue of incidents through the 70s and 80s led to attention from the press, and the stories of the poltergeist of Penny Lane became famous. Every business which had traded from 44 Penny Lane succumbed to failure and bankruptcy. 3 of the owners vanished completely and never returned. Their shops were left untouched like a time capsule until the bailiffs removed everything, and the cycle would begin again. The evidence was undeniable. Number 44 has a presence. An evil presence. An evil presence, yes, but a ghost? He wasn't so sure. Dave popped his head inside the retail place and took a cautious step forward. The temperature dropped again and he stopped. Someone or something was watching him. The sensation hit him with sudden certainty. Not his imagination, not nerves. It was the primitive instinct of prey, sensing a predator nearby. And he stepped back into the hallway. His eyes drifted upwards. At the top of the stairs, the shadows appeared thicker than they should have been. The darkness seemed to gather in one place, pooling around the landing as though it possessed weight and form. Dave strained to see past the top stairs. For a brief second, he thought he caught the outline of a small figure, standing perfectly still, watching him. Then it was gone. His heart hammered against his ribs. The building remained silent, yet he could feel an intelligence lurking above him. Patient, malevolent, just waiting.
Looking for your next dark obsession? Best-selling thriller author Conrad Jones has gripped over 3 million readers worldwide, with 38 brutal, fast-paced thrillers across 6 explosive series. From serial killers to organised crime and psychological terror, these books don't let you go. Search Conrad Jones on Amazon today, if you dare.
The darkness at the top of the stairs seemed almost to breathe. A single drop of water splashed somewhere behind him. Dave spun around, but there was nothing there. When he turned back to the stairs, the shadows on the landing looked closer, and from somewhere in the blackness above came the faintest sound, a slow, rasping whisper that might have been the voice of the dead trying to remember how to speak. Had the evil presence noticed him and was no longer content to watch him in silence, whispering a warning? He felt the urge to turn and leave the building, but that's what the evil wanted. It has no power in this world, Dave, he said to himself, or that's what he believed. The whisper came again. We thought you had more time. Was it a whisper or his imagination? Did he really hear that, or was it a suggestion from his own subconscious? Either way, it knocked him sick. The oncologist had used those exact words to tell him the radiotherapy hadn't worked and his cancer had spread. It was now in his lungs, his spine and liver, and it was stage 4. His mortality was staring at him in the face. Yet here he was, chasing ghosts, wasting his last weeks on this mortal coil. But he still believed there was no such thing as ghosts. He had no doubt that there was bad energy in the building, but it wasn't a dead human who had remained on the earth. If living things could remain after death, why were there no ghost horses, dogs or dinosaurs roaming the planet? Dave believed death was death, but he also believed that the energy of the universe came in many forms, some good and some bad, and that it sometimes attached itself to people, places, bricks and mortar. 44 Penny Lane had been notorious since the 1800s. Why? Nobody could say. But for some reason, the bad energy lingered within its walls. He could feel it all around him. 44 Penny Lane had been in probate limbo for 2 years following the untimely death of the last owner, who hung himself from the balustrade at the top landing. The neighbours reported hearing him ranting before he committed suicide, shouting demonic phrases that they couldn't decipher apart from the words Lucifer and Baphomet and the numbers 666, the mark of the devil. They said they were still hearing it to this day after dark. Not shouted, whispered, echoing through the walls. Although sceptical, Dave was convinced that his pain and suffering at the point of his demise, when he hanged himself, would add to the bad energy and make it more concentrated. Evil begets evil. The police were sick of being called to the empty property, and they ignored complaints nowadays. When the neighbours complained, no officers were sent to investigate the empty building. They had more important priorities. The estate agent blamed structural issues. They blamed the kind of thing that no one in a uniform wants to write on a form: paranormal activity. Not ghosts or burglars. There were no such things as ghosts, and the burglars didn't waste their time on empty buildings. This was not a dead person returning. It was a source of energy, of evil energy, probably demonic. They could not explain demonic activity, but he was convinced there was such a thing, and sometimes it crossed into our world. Penny Lane was a crossing point. I hope you enjoyed episode 2. The story will be continued shortly in episode 3. Welcome back to Tales from the Dark Side with me, Conrad Jones.
You've been listening to Tales from the Dark Side with best-selling author Conrad Jones. This podcast is produced by me, Laura Raymond, with music from Stanley T. Jones. Find links to Conrad Jones's books and his Amazon page in the show notes of this podcast, or search on Amazon.